The subjects of this video are calligraphic texts and daughter texts, both in and outside of accented films. Before I get into these concepts, it's important to establish what an accented film is. Accented films are made primarily by those relocated from third world or post-colonial countries. Because of this relocation, the filmmakers often have a sense of distance, both from the culture of their original home and their current home, often making films about the intersection between the cultures. This tension is presented in accented films in many ways, with one of them being the use of calligraphy in the text of the film. In many films made in first world countries, subtitling and captioning is very uniform, with text being at the bottom of the screen to tell the viewer what the characters are saying. Although this is still used in accented film, the intersection of multiple cultures, and likely multiple languages, makes subtitling work a bit differently than in most films. Subtitling of dialogue in these films are often more economical, with the way text is presented making up for some of the lacking content of the subtitles. One example of a film that heavily uses these techniques is Trinh T. Minh-ha's Surname Viet, Given Name Nam. The film uses intertitles of things characters are going to say minutes into their interview, as well as superimposing text over said interview, not only to help with comprehension of what they are saying, but to highlight what the filmmakers feel is important within their interview. The use of different fonts, print sizes, font colors, and spacing of text is another way that the filmmakers manipulate text in order to further the message of the struggles Vietnamese women went through during an era of political corruption in Vietnam. Another stylistic choice that is common within accented films is the use of mother-daughter relationships to show the crossing of multiple cultures by comparing the two characters. The main focus of these films is often the daughter, who is trying to define themselves and come to terms with the differences between them and their mother. Both characters are often estranged from their country of origin, with the mother often stuck in the past, hanging on to the ways of her old culture, while the daughter is focused on the present. In addition to this, many accented films that present a mother-daughter relationship have the daughter character move to another country, becoming 1 degree further away from their country of origin. Many of these mother-daughter films layer dialogue, texts, and other sounds to create a sense of cultural dissonance. One film that does this especially well is Mona Hatom's Measures of Distance. This film focuses on letters written by the mother to the daughter in Arabic. Despite this, the narration of the letters is done in English by the daughter, while the Arabic text is shown on the screen. The content of the letters focuses primarily on the subject of sexuality and women's role in Middle Eastern countries. In addition to the narration, Arabic speech and the sound of London can be heard in the background, making for this mishmash of completely different cultures to show how extreme the collision of these cultures are to the characters. Chantal Akerman's News from Home creates a mother-daughter narrative in a similar way. The film focuses on letters that Akerman got from her mother after moving to New York. These personal, loving letters are juxtaposed by shots of New York City, which are often shot in a way that portrays the city as very cold and uncaring in Ackerman's eyes. This can be seen as Ackerman sacrificing this loving home life for an important opportunity to make the film she wants. This is further pronounced when listening to the content of the letters that her mother writes her. Each letter becomes increasingly more desperate for information on Ackerman's life, as it's implied that Ackerman herself becomes more distant and less revealing of her life in America over time. Although these concepts are synonymous with accented filmmaking, that does not mean that they are needed in order for a film to be accented. Conversely, the application of these concepts in a film does not automatically make the film an accented film. One recent film that applies these concepts in a way that can be seen as accented adjacent is Everything Everywhere All at Once. One of the primary relationships in this film is between a first-generation US immigrant, Evelyn, and her daughter, Joy, who is raised in America. Joy struggles to speak Mandarin, making it difficult to speak with some of her family. In addition to the slight language barrier, the two struggle to understand each other's perspective on their relationship. While Evelyn believes that a mother's job is to provide for her family, what Joy wants from her mother is more personal, a heartfelt relationship. Where the film differs a bit from how many accented filmmakers use this relationship is that the focus of the film is on Evelyn rediscovering herself, as well as coming to terms with who her daughter is and accepting her for it. Joy still gets some elements of rediscovery, especially in the latter half of the film, but most of the onus changes on Evelyn. Instead of having the daughter try to understand herself through her relationship with her mother and culture of origin, Everything Everywhere All at Once creates an almost inverse narrative of many accented mother-daughter films, where the mother has to understand how her culture of origin fits into the context of her present life in a different country. As far as calligraphy goes, most of the film's subtitles are fairly standard for a first-world blockbuster film, but one scene does use text in a more abstract way. There's a sequence in which Evelyn and Joy are going through all the possible universes that could exist, one of which being where they are both rocks. The soundscape of this scene is completely barren, with only a small amount of wind in the room tone. Neither character is capable of auditory speech, so instead, the characters converse through text. The font is simple, much like the universe that they are in. Each character has a text of different color on different sides of the screen. When Joy initiates a short monologue, the text becomes centered, with Evelyn interrupting the monologue, Joy by having her text also configured in the center. Italicization and bolding is used to imply certain vocal inflections that the characters would have. Every little detail of the calligraphy in this scene is meant to add a more intimate, human aspect to a scene that is extremely absurd in nature, rather than to emphasize certain aspects of the larger message of the film like in accented films. Another way in which Everything Everywhere All at Once can be considered accented adjacent is in its casting crew. Many accented filmmakers are people who are from a different country than the one the film is being produced in. They are often thrown into this foreign world after being exiled or choosing to leave, with many of their films being autobiographical or biographical of their people of origin. This is most definitely not the case with Everything Everywhere All at Once, with both Daniel Kwan and Daniel Schreiner being born and raised in the US. The closest this film might get to being autobiographical of the Chinese-American immigrant experience may mirror some experiences Kwan had in his life, but he's never explicitly stated this in interviews. Same goes for a lot of the cast, who are primarily American born and raised. The two members of the production that actually have the biggest ties to the experiences of Asia-born people coming to America are Michelle Yeoh, who plays Evelyn, and Ki-Hoo Kwon, who plays Waymond. Although neither is technically Chinese, these actors have tapped into some of their experiences initially interacting with a foreign country when making this film. When looking at the calligraphic texts and daughter texts, it is important to understand their connection to a transnational identity, as well as the common themes of exile and experiences in a foreign land that are often attached with accented films. However, it is equally important to understand that these techniques are not just limited to accented films. Although not many mainstream Hollywood films use unique typography decisions or transnational mother-daughter stories, films like Everything Everywhere All at Once can be seen as a turning point for the use of these techniques, among others that are used in accented cinema in more traditional blockbusters.